One of the battles that happened along Sherman's march to the sea happened here at Kennesaw Mountain, which is located in Cobb County, about 20 miles north of Atlanta. Today, this is the site of a national park, and it includes a visitor center. So let's go inside and meet someone here who works at the visitor center, and then also take a look at the museum exhibits.
We're here at Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park, and a couple things you need to consider when you're studying Kennesaw Mountain battle. First, who is General Sherman? What are his orders? What are his goals in 1864? Remember, the war's been going on since 1861. Also, you need to look at how the battle took place here at Kennesaw Mountain. Look for things like total war, entrenchments, and then finally you're going to want to look at the fall of Atlanta and what happened there. And finally, the march to the sea, when Sherman goes to Savannah. You're going to need to look at those things. Here at the battlefield, if you ever get a chance to visit us, come see us here at the Visitor Center. We can give you a map about the park and send you to all the historic sites, and you can see trenches and monuments and cannons and all the great battlefield things that the National Park Service has to offer. Thanks a lot and good luck in your studies.
This is a photograph of Union Commander William Sherman. Born in Ohio, Sherman graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point in 1840. As a young officer, he had briefly served at Marietta, Georgia, and had ridden over much of the surrounding countryside. After resigning from the Army in 1853, he pursued unsuccessful careers as a banker and lawyer before becoming the first president of a college now known as Louisiana State University. When Louisiana seceded, he bid his students a tearful goodbye and offered his services to the Union Army. Now 44 years old, he prepares for the upcoming campaign by studying the 1860 census returns for Georgia and a tax digest detailing the population and statistics of every county in the state. About half of Sherman's soldiers come from Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. For the most part, they are American-born, but there are thousands of immigrant Irish, Germans, Swedes, and Italians in the ranks, and even a company of Winnebago Indians from Wisconsin. For the Confederates, over 80% of General Johnston's infantry comes from Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Tennessee. Only a handful of regiments represent the other Confederate states. For the most part, these men are Southern-born. Except for some Irish and Germans, there are not many foreign-born Americans in the ranks. Like their opponents, most Southern soldiers were farmers before the war began. The vast majority of them do not own slaves. They live on meager rations of cornbread and beef and are not nearly as well-dressed or well-equipped as their enemies. They are unquestionably brave, but are not always skillfully led. This map indicates the railroad lines that crisscrossed the state in the 1860s. One newspaper reporter said, quote, "No one goes anywhere without passing through Atlanta," end quote. 4 rail lines, the Western and Atlantic, Atlanta and West Point, Macon and Western, and the Georgia Railroad converge on the city from all points of the compass. Atlanta is the crossroads of the Confederacy. The Atlanta campaign begins in early May of 1864, and this map details movement of the troops. You had skirmishes at Tunnel Hill on May 6th and 7th, just outside of Ringgold. May 8th through the 11th, you had demonstrations at Rocky Face Ridge. May 14th and 15th, you had the Battle of Resaca. The blue lines indicate movement of Union troops. Red would be Confederate troops. Following the railroad south toward Kennesaw Mountain and the city of Atlanta. This photograph shows you Union trenches in front of Little Kennesaw and Pigeon Hill. During Sherman's march through Georgia to the sea, the Confederates did have a handful of victories, and the battle at Kennesaw Mountain on June 27, 1864, was one of them. All total, 4,000 soldiers lost their life here, 3,000 Union soldiers died, and 1,000 Confederate soldiers. This cartridge box holds 20 rounds of ammunition. A cavalryman usually wears his cartridge box on his waist belt along with his pistol and saber. These are artifacts that have been discovered on the property here at Kennesaw National Battlefield. You're looking at belt plates, a tin cup, a tin plate, and a fork, a straight razor and hand mirror, and a toothbrush. This glove belonged to Lieutenant Colonel Columbus Sykes, a 32-year-old lawyer from a wealthy Mississippi slaveholding family. The Union and Confederate armies do not issue gloves, so the officers and men provide their own. This is a picture of Lieutenant Colonel Columbus Sykes. In this photo, you see Sherman's men pulling up railroad lines. Here you see locomotives amid what's left of an engine house after Sherman and his troops came through Atlanta. In 1905, 40 years after the end of the Civil War, veterans of the Union and Confederate troops gather in Demorest, Georgia for a photograph.